Welcome aboard. I'm Captain Wayne Canning, and I'll be your host for this Ocean Navigator magazine voyaging tips video. I once had a friend who used to always say, if he ever fell out of an airplane, he hoped that there was a garden hose or extension cord nearby, because surely he would get tangled up in it before he hit the ground. Now this is a bit extreme, but I understand where he's coming from. Loose lines and such are easy to get tangled up in. So on a boat, it's important to keep your lines neat and tidy. It's been said that a tidy boat is a happy boat, and I think I understand this. Being a little bit OCD with neatness, I like my lines to be neat. And a lot of sailors take pride in neatness on their boat. But there's more to it than just neatness. It's also important for the safety of the boat. Lines need to play out easily and freely. If you have to drop a load quickly, such as dropping a sail or letting a sheet loose, you want that line to play out freely and easily. If it binds up and snags, it could become a safety issue. So keeping your lines neat is important. Almost all lines at some point need to be coiled up. So let's take a quick look at some of the basic methods of coiling lines. We'll start with the simple basic coil. Start with the standing end, or the end that may be attached to a piece of equipment. This may go to a winch, halyard, whatever. You start with that end facing away from you, your thumb pointing towards the piece of equipment or the standing end. Then it loops over your hand towards your body. Now we want to coil the line in a counterclockwise direction. While we're doing this, we give the line just a little bit of a twist between our thumb and fingers. This will help let the line lay neatly in the loop. The reason for this is most lines have a right-hand bias in their coils. It's very rare to find one with a left hand. So you want to wind it counterclockwise to work with this. As we coil it, we'll just keep giving it a little twist. But you'll notice something happening here. We're getting a bit of a hockle here. This is because the line is twisting as it goes down. You have to work those hockles out, and I'll talk more about this in a minute. You just lay the line, giving it a twist each time, and there's your basic coil. Nothing fancy. Now, speaking of the hockles, because that's a problem with most lines on most sailboats, we want to make sure that we eliminate that, and one way to do that is the figure-8 coil. This is probably the most common and best way to coil lines on a sailboat. This time, as we coil the line, we start with the line in our hand just as we did before, but as we coil it, instead of giving it a twist over like that towards us, we rotate our hands away from us and we drop the line over our hand like that. So each one we rotate away and drop over. And you can see what's happening here. We're getting a figure-8 to the line. Hence the name figure-8 coil. The reason this is better on boats is because it's going back and forth like that. You don't get the hockles in the line like you do with a standard coil. So the line will play out much better, it's easier to coil, and it works better all around. This is definitely the preferred method on most sailboats and required on many racing sailboats. One more type of coil, which is particularly useful for long lines, is the butterfly coil. And in this method, we're going to put the loop on either side of our hand. So instead of coming around the top like this for the first one, we'll come around going away from us like that. Then on the next one, we alternate. We come towards us, away from us. Towards us, away from us. Towards us. And what you get is essentially one long loop. So it's good anywhere you need a long line coiled and you want it to be able to release quickly. It's also good for throwing lines because you have fewer coils to unwind as the line goes out. And finally, there's the daisy chain coil. Now, I don't use this much on my boat myself. I know some people like to use this for dock lines. It's useful for things such as extension cords and other stiff lines. Basically, what you do is you take a loop in the end of the line and you reach through and pull another loop through, and you just keep doing that. Pull a loop through, pull a loop through, pull a loop through, pull a loop through, and you can just keep going on like that, hence the name daisy chain. The problem is it's a little bulky for storage. It does have the advantage that if you just need to pull a little bit of line out, you can do that without releasing the whole coil. Also, it releases fairly quickly and easily. So now you have your line coiled. Now what? You can't just toss the line down because the coil will undo and it'll become a tangled mess almost immediately. We know how lines like to do that. So we need to keep this thing organized and we need to keep it under control. There's a couple of different methods for doing that. First is just a basic bite where you bring the end of the line, have the free end, you have about one loop left, maybe less. You can always do a little bit less and you can adjust that. You bring that loop around and then you pull a bite through and you snug it up like that. That works pretty good, and that's a good method of doing things if you need to release the line quickly. This is a good method for hanging halyard lines that you might want to release quickly. If you want to store the line in a locker or something, that's going to come undone relatively easily. So we can fix that a little bit. If we want the line to stay in a coil a little bit tighter and be able to put it into a locker, the next option is we'll take a couple of bites around it. I like to take 3 or 4. Then, as you notice, my hand coming through the loop, I'll just wrap my fingers around that, pull that through, and then drop the bitter end or the free end through the loop. And there you go. I can hang this line up. I can do a clove hitch on a rail and hang the line like that. There's many options for this. This works pretty good. A modification on that is this time, as we pull the bite through, instead of bringing this line through it, we will just loop this over the top of the line and bring it down to the rest of the bites like that, and then we can snug it up tight. That's good if you're going to hang the line on a hook or you want to throw it in a locker. That's also a very good way to keep this in a nice neat coil, and it'll stay like that. There are other methods of securing coiled lines as well. One of my favorites is the halyard hanger or line hanger, which is basically just a clip with a line on it. You coil your line and you pull the line on the line hanger up and over and drop it over the clip, and the line stays neatly. This is great for doing halyards and stuff in the cockpit. It releases quickly and it holds the line fairly securely. At this point, I would mention that when we are storing our lines, we want to store them where we're hanging them so that they'll dry out and air out. We never want to just throw the lines in a pile inside of a locker because they'll get mildewed like that. Along the same lines as a halyard hanger or line hanger are canvas bags designed to put your tail ends in. These work reasonably well, but the problem is as you put your lines in the bag, one line ends up on the bottom of the bag, and this will make it difficult to get out when you need to. I find they tend to get jumbled a little bit. I have seen a modification on this on some catamarans where they'll use a mesh bag, and it's more of a tube that you drop the line into, and they're separated so each line goes into its own individual tube. I think this is a better implementation of the line bag. Another useful method of hanging coils is what I call the lifeline loop. And this is particularly useful for things like sheet lines where you just want to hang the line temporarily. It's also good for coiling the tail end of a roller furling line. Basically, all you do is drop the coil over the lifeline at the midpoint, reach in underneath the lifeline, grab the top of the coil, and pull it back through the middle of the coil until the loop hangs neatly there. It's also very easy to release it. You just grab the top of the coil again, push it back through, and grab it out, and you're good to go. Alright, these are some of the basic methods for keeping your lines neat and organized. I know others will have other ideas as well, and I'd love to hear them. But for the most part, these are the most simple and basic methods of keeping your lines organized. Remember, it's important to keep your lines organized for the safety of both you and your crew. Well, that concludes this Ocean Navigator Magazine's Voyaging Tips video. I hope you found it useful. If you have a voyaging tip you'd like to share with our readers, please let me know. Maybe I'll make a video out of it. Please check out Ocean Navigator Magazine's YouTube channel for more voyaging tips and sailing videos. Also, be sure to check out Ocean Navigator Magazine at your local newsstand and Ocean Navigator Magazine online. Until next time, I'm Captain Wayne, wishing you fair winds and following seas.